They followed someone else's instructions to the minute, then they died. The only evidence of what killed them decomposed in a broken freezer before anyone could test it. The case has been open for 60 years. The cause of death is still officially unknown. In August 1966, 2 electronics engineers were found dead on a remote hill outside Niterói, Brazil. Beside them, lead masks covering their eyes, and a handwritten note that read, "Ingest capsules. After effect, protect metals. Wait for the signal of the mask." No capsules were found. No signal was ever explained. A third person was almost certainly present. That person has never been identified. The note was written in the handwriting of one man, but in vocabulary that wasn't his. Someone designed this. Someone chose the time, the place, and whatever was in those capsules. That person has said nothing for 60 years. This is the only case where the answer existed, was physically in a room, and then ceased to exist. The answer is not hidden. It is gone. What remains is the note, and the question of who handed it to them. Ingest capsules at 1830. The note specifies a time. The note specifies an action. The men followed both. But when police searched the area, the bodies, the clothing, the surrounding ground, no capsules were found, no container, no residue, no wrappers. Whatever the men ingested, the physical evidence of it was gone before anyone arrived. This should not have mattered. Autopsies were performed. Organs were removed for toxicological analysis. In any normal investigation, those organs would have been tested and the substance identified: poison, narcotic, hallucinogen, sedative. A name would have been attached to the cause of death. A mechanism would have been understood. The investigation would have had a starting point that was not a handwritten note, but a chemical formula. The organs were never tested. The mortuary where they were stored suffered a freezer malfunction. The samples decomposed before analysis could be conducted. The only physical material that could have revealed what killed these men rotted in a broken appliance and was discarded. Think about what that means. The answer was physically present. It was in a labeled container, in a refrigerated room, in a government building with an address. A technician could have walked in, run a standard panel, and read the result. And instead, the equipment failed and the samples turned to waste. Not because of a conspiracy, not because of a cover-up, because of a compressor in a freezer that stopped working and nobody noticed in time. Every theory proposed in the 60 years since depends on what was in those capsules. Every explanation begins there, and that beginning has been permanently erased. There is no path back to it. On August 17, 1966, Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel José Viana told their families they were traveling to São Paulo to purchase electronic supplies and a used car. It was a routine explanation. They had made similar trips before. No one questioned it. They did not go to São Paulo. They went to Niterói, roughly 300 kilometers in the opposite direction. This was not a wrong turn. This was a different destination, planned from the start and concealed with a lie that had been rehearsed. In Niterói, they were seen at a small shop where they purchased 2 matching raincoats and a single bottle of mineral water. 2 raincoats and 1 bottle. The combination is specific. They knew they would need protection from rain. They knew they would need water, but only 1 bottle, as though the water had a purpose beyond hydration, as though it was part of the procedure, not part of the trip. Later that afternoon, they entered a bar. They had time. Whatever came next was not yet due, but a waitress would later recall that one of the men, she believed it was Miguel, could not sit still. He kept checking his watch, not casually, repeatedly, compulsively. Not as though he was late for being here, but as though he was counting down to something that came after. The other man was calm. They did not speak much. They did not order food. They drank and they waited. And Miguel kept looking at the time, as if the minutes themselves were a corridor he needed to pass through before reaching whatever was on the other side. They left the bar. They were never seen alive again. 3 days passed. On August 20th, a boy flying a kite on Morro de Vintém, a steep, overgrown hill on the outskirts of Niterói, spotted 2 bodies in the tall grass near the summit. He ran home. His family called the police. Police did not arrive that day. Morro de Vintém is not a park. It is steep, isolated, covered in dense vegetation, difficult to climb, even in daylight with proper equipment. The paths are narrow and overgrown. Reaching the summit requires physical effort and intent. It took investigators over 24 hours to reach the site, and they knew exactly where to look. And yet 2 men in formal suits with no visible hiking equipment, no ropes, no tools, reached the summit. They did not stumble upon this place. They chose it. Or someone chose it for them. The site was flat enough to lie down. It offered a clear, unobstructed view of the sky. It was far from any road, any house, any witness. By every measure, it was selected for what was about to happen. When police finally reached the scene, it was precise and undisturbed. The 2 men lay side by side on their backs. They wore suits. Over their eyes, crude masks made of lead, shaped like simple eye covers, held in place with cloth. Beside them lay the note. No signs of struggle, no signs of violence, no scattered belongings, no evidence of panic or resistance. Nothing out of place. Whatever happened on that hill happened according to plan. Near the bodies, police found a handkerchief. It bore embroidered initials. The initials matched neither Manuel nor Miguel. It belonged to someone who had been close enough to the dying men to leave a personal item behind, and far enough from the investigation to never be connected to it. A small thing, easy to miss, but it means someone else was there, close enough to drop something from a pocket. Then there is the note itself. It was written in Miguel's handwriting, confirmed. But the vocabulary, the phrasing, the specific language of the instructions did not match his known level of education. The words were more technical, more precise, more structured than anything in Miguel's other writings. The hand was his, the mind was not. Someone stood beside him and dictated what to write. Someone who chose every word carefully. Between the bar and the summit, there is a gap of approximately 3 hours that investigators could never account for. 3 hours. The men left the bar with time to spare before the note's specified hour. Where they went, who they met, what they were told in those 3 hours. None of it left a trace. No witness, no receipt, no phone call. 3 hours of preparation for something, and the preparation itself is invisible. And the bodies themselves. Investigators noted that the positioning, side by side, symmetrical, composed, suggested they may have been arranged after death. But there were no drag marks in the surrounding vegetation. If someone moved them, that person was careful, deliberate, present after the men stopped breathing, present long enough to arrange the scene and then leave without a trace. Someone else was on that hill, someone who brought something, took something, and left before anyone arrived. That person has never been found. Manuel was 32, Miguel was 34. They were electronics technicians, trained professionals who repaired radios and television sets, who understood circuits, frequencies, signals, and voltage. They were not naive men. They were not drifters or thrill seekers or people on the margins. They were the kind of men neighbors trusted to fix things, careful, methodical, grounded in how the physical world worked. Whatever they believed was going to happen on that hill was filtered through minds that dealt in real, measurable phenomena every day. Both men participated. Both men prepared. Both men climbed. The question is not whether they went willingly. They did. The question is what they were told, and by whom. Picture their workshop, soldering irons on the bench, schematics pinned to the wall, transistor radios in various stages of repair, journals with frequency tables and voltage calculations, and beside all of it, books about contact with the spirit world, pamphlets on astral communication, notes from meetings with people who believed electromagnetic signals could reach beyond the living. This was not a contradiction to them. It was a continuum. In 1960s Brazil, spiritism was practiced by millions. Engineers, lawyers, doctors, military officers. It held that communication with the dead was governed by laws as real as physics, and that the right electromagnetic frequencies could open channels between the living and whatever exists beyond ordinary perception. Manuel and Miguel attended spiritist meetings. They experimented with frequency and signal, not as hobbyists playing at the occult, but with genuine technical intent, the same precision they brought to repairing a broken radio. The lead masks were not bizarre to them. They were equipment, protection for the eyes during an expected electromagnetic event. The capsules were preparation. The note was a protocol. To them, What they were doing on that hill was an experiment. They had tools, they had instructions, they had a time. This explains why they were there. It does not explain who provided the capsules. It does not explain who chose the specific chemicals. It does not explain who dictated the note in vocabulary neither man would have used on his own. Belief explains motive. It does not explain mechanism, and it does not explain the person who left the hill alive. In 60 years, 3 serious theories have been proposed. Each one accounts for part of the evidence. None account for all of it. The first, a spiritist group ritual that went fatally wrong. The men were part of a larger circle conducting an experiment on that hilltop. The capsules were meant to induce an altered state, not death. The dosage was miscalculated. The group panicked. The surviving members took the remaining evidence and never came forward. This explains the third person, the missing capsules, the decades of silence. But no spiritist group in Niterói or Campos was ever identified that included both men. No member ever came forward, not during the investigation, not in 60 years of media coverage, not anonymously, not on a deathbed. And it does not explain the vocabulary in the note, the precise technical language that did not belong to either man. The note says nothing about a group. The note only says, wait for the signal. The second, someone recruited them, someone with more knowledge, more authority, or more intent. The men were willing participants, but they were lied to about the risk. This person was on the hill. This person provided the capsules. This person left when it was over. It would explain everything: the vocabulary, the gap, the handkerchief, the arranged bodies. But it requires a figure who exists only as an absence, present in every piece of evidence, absent from every record. No name, no motive, no trace. The note only says, ingest capsules at 1830. The third, the masks were real protection. The capsules were preparation. The signal was expected, genuinely, literally expected, at a specific time, from a specific source. The men lay down and waited for it the way you would wait for a broadcast on a scheduled frequency. This is the only theory that takes the note completely at face value, every word literal, every instruction real. But then, what was the source? No device was found, no transmitter, no equipment of any kind. If the signal was supposed to come from somewhere, that somewhere has never been identified. And if it was never real, then someone told 2 men to lie down on a hill, cover their eyes, and swallow capsules while waiting for something that was never going to arrive. The case was never closed because it was never solved. No one has been charged. No group has claimed knowledge. No family member of either man has ever reported receiving a confession, an explanation, or even a specific rumor that led anywhere. If a third person was present, and the evidence says one was, that person has lived with this for nearly 60 years. They watched the investigation stall. They watched journalists arrive and leave empty-handed. In 2004, Brazilian television aired a documentary about the case. Interviews, reconstructions, the note displayed on screen, the hill filmed from every angle. The broadcast reached millions. No one called, no one wrote, no one walked into a police station. The silence held. That silence is not passive. It is a decision, and it is happening right now. Whoever this person is, if they are still alive, they woke up this morning and chose not to speak. They will go to bed tonight and choose it again. They have watched 2 dead men become one of Brazil's most famous unsolved mysteries. They have seen the headlines, heard the questions, watched the documentaries air, and every single morning for 60 years, they have opened their eyes and decided, not today. The note still exists. The words have not changed. Ingest capsules. After effect, protect metals. Wait for the signal of the mask. Someone wrote those words, or dictated them, knowing what the capsules contained. Someone placed them in the hands of 2 men who trusted the plan enough to follow it precisely. Someone watched, or expected to watch, as the plan was carried out. And then, that person left the hill, left the city, left the story, and has never returned to it. The note is an instruction set. It has a sequence, a logic, a structure. It was written by someone who believed they understood what would happen next. But the key to those instructions, the substance that would have explained everything, was destroyed in a freezer that no one thought to check, and the person who could fill that silence has chosen not to, for 60 years running. The question is not what happened on Morro do Vintém. The question is what it means that someone already knows. Two men in suits climbed a hill at dusk. They lay down side by side in the grass. They covered their eyes with lead. They swallowed what they were given, and they waited for a signal that, as far as anyone can prove, was never coming. The grass grew over the path they took. The case file is still open. The masks are still in evidence, and the two men are still on that hill. In every photograph, in every report, in every version of this story that has ever been told, side by side, eyes covered, waiting. If you enjoy dark mysteries and forbidden history, subscribe to the Black Archive.